So we are hitting record here, ready to go. Thanks, crew. We're kicking off our development class today, and we're going to do lease versus buy. And we have an expert here with us, and that is Mr. Bill O'Hara. So I'm going to share my screen, Bill, and we're going to get going. For all of our friends out there that are joining us via Zoom, thank you for joining. And if you could mute yourself on your end, that'd be great, because we are getting some background noise. Please mute yourself on your end.
Highly recommended.
Give everybody a chance to mute. All right. Good deal. Well, we got a ton of participants across the group here in all of our stores through Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. So, hey, Bill, can you see my screen?
I can.
Awesome. All right. We're ready to roll.
All right, let's do it. Want to kick it off here, Mike?
Yeah, so I will introduce Bill here. For those of you that don't know Bill O'Hara, Bill is a vice president of a region out in Chicago, runs a bunch of our stores out in Chicago, and recently took a promotion and moved from all three of the Orland Park stores. So does a phenomenal job. And one of the things I love about Bill is he's all about others. He's all about growth and development of others. And he's going to give you his bio and his background, but he's been in the business several years. And the thing he's most proud of is people that he's been able to help and grow and develop around him. Countless people that have been promoted from within Ziegler, but also prior to Ziegler, he's had at least 4 people that have become dealers that worked for him. So very, very cool track record. And Bill, we appreciate you investing time with us today at Ziegler.
I'm in.
And Bill's previous life.
Oh,
I got to show you a little picture here.
oh, nice.
In Bill's previous life, before he was a dealer,
Morning. How are you?
he actually
Fantastic. Thank you.
doubled as Magnum PI.
Oh, yeah.
Resemblance is uncanny. So, with that, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Mike, and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us this morning. And here's wow, all my friends showed up. This is awesome. I didn't have to pay them that much either. I think $20 a piece to show to be my friend this morning. But thanks for joining us. I just give a little background. Those that don't know me, Bill O'Hara, I joined the group back in 2013 of July, and this is I hate to keep dating myself, but my 39th year in the car business. So I just give you a little short bio where I'm at. I started selling cars in 1982 at a Ford dealership in Bloomfield or West Bloomfield, Michigan. The store name was Allen Ford back in the day. And those of you that been at it a long time, if you remember, interest rates back in the day to buy a new car were 16.5%, and mortgages peaked at like 18.3%. So to say the least, the business as I joined it was on its heels. It was pretty tough. In fact, the first month in February of '82, I still remember our Ford store, which is on a major road in a big populated area, we sold 38 cars for the entire month of February, new and used. That's how tough it was back in the day. But we fought it off, and things started turning around, and I joined a dealership on Woodward Avenue, Michigan, called Royal Oak Ford back in 1983, and started selling cars there, and that's when my career took off. So at a young age of 24, selling cars, I made $63,000 selling cars my first full year selling cars back in 1984. So I was rich. That was that was it. So I went out and blew every dime I had. I bought a house, I bought a vet, and I bought a boat. And got myself into debt big time. So, which was good because I had to pay for all that stuff. So by 1985, I became a sales manager at the Ford store. Really never looked back in selling cars. And I joined Briarwood Ford back in late 1987. It was a brand new build, and we built a brand new Ford store and I was 27 at the time. I was a GSM, and the owner was 28, and then the partner was 32. It was just the three of us kind of took that store and got it up and running. In our first month, we sold 100 in January of '88. Then we sold 200 in February. Then we sold 300 in March. That quick, and it was just me and an F&I guy at the time, and so we averaged about 350 cars a month out of that store. And then I got my break back in, while I was working there, my desire to have my own store was a big dream of mine. And I kind of put it out there at 30 years old and said, I want to get my own dealership by the time I'm 30. And that was a pretty lofty goal. Well, I accomplished it. It wasn't at 30, but at 33, I got approved for a Chrysler store. I called on an open point and opened up my Chrysler Dodge Jeep store in September of '94. Back then it was Chrysler Dodge Jeep Plymouth Eagle. And back then until the brands came down, but had a great run. We had that store. I had it for 18 years. And our best year in 1999, we sold 2,000 cars out of there. So the great news with that, in 2013, Aaron Ziegler saved me. And I tried, after I sold my dealership in 2012, after the meltdown, he saved me and I joined the auto group in July of 2013. So just a little short bio of where I've been. But, and it's been a great run, a little over 7 years with the group. And I got to tell you, just like everybody else says, it's a fantastic group. Even as a dealer principal, I have learned so much working for the auto group. And I just love helping develop and train and whatever I can do to help people get better at their job. So with that, I just want to talk about the goal for the day. The goal here is to close more deals and sell more cars. It's not necessarily to lease them all, although to build a bigger book of business with leasing. So that's the goal. So just wanted to get into that. I think, Mike, you're going to take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. It's awesome hearing your journey and your success. And if you've had an opportunity to work with Bill, you're working with him, not for him. And he is all about that growth and development of people. So thanks for investing time with us today, Bill. We really appreciate you. So just threw a couple stats and facts up here. And this is actually about us, right? In the business, average age 35 years old, 91% are male, 9% are female. We probably all know female in the business in our dealership. And I have one sitting with me right here in my office that does a fabulous job. So females in our business do fabulous. Also wanted to scoot down to second to last. Reputation was why 23% picked their current dealership. And it's probably even higher now. This is probably an old stat. But think about reputation and building our reputation as an organization, also building your reputation as a salesperson. It's so huge, especially with social media nowadays. And we've got the R actually on our Pride wristband, right? Reputation. So that's important. Other one here is that the training development. Most organizations don't put a lot into training development. That's one thing that we pride ourselves on. So you look at the average income with no training investment, and then the average income with ongoing training investment. And it's just remarkable, the difference. So don't take that lightly. Don't take it for granted. And I know it's hard to be away from our day to day and invest an hour and a half in yourself, but it pays off. And it pays off in the long run for you personally and for the department. So congratulations to all of you for being here and investing time in yourself. Bill, you want to take this one? This is about our retail customer.
Yeah, so key facts that you need to know and remember. So you look at number one, 99% of people want to drive the vehicle before they buy it. Well, that is a key factor. And when you think about it back in the day, and again, go back to my Chrysler days, but everybody remembers Lee Iacocca back in the day when he took over Chrysler, or saved Chrysler, and then took it over and came out with the K car. Remember the K car? They were junk. But no, they weren't that bad. But he actually did a big campaign, and he went out there and he paid anybody that came in and drove a car, he paid them $50.
Not even on that, right? On the screen?
I'm sorry, can you hear me all right?
Yep, we're good, Bill.
Yeah, so he paid $50 advertising out there to try to drive people in to drive a car. That's how most important. It's more important to drive a car, make sure you do a demo drive, because that's what people bought K cars back in the day. And number two, 78% of the people who actually took the time to go out and look at a new or used vehicle end up buying one soon. And we know that's the fact. And this one I love, 85% of the people who do end up buying decided to buy before they ever left home. So think about the customer walking in today. If 85% of them already decided they're buying, that's what I am. If I'm going somewhere, I always tell the salesperson, it's your lucky day, because I'm a buyer. I'm going in to buy something. Think about that stat. So it's a job that we do and the performance that we do and the relationship that we build that we can make that deal happen. And we look at our closing ratio, but 85% of them are telling us that they already made a decision to buy a car. 58% of the people buy the same product they looked at first. So only 58%, 71% of the people bought because they liked, trusted, and respected the salesperson they dealt with. Right? I mean, we can turn off a customer in a heartbeat and make sure they don't buy a car from us. But that's what's selling the car, is it's us, along with our dealership and reputation. You look at number 6, 90+% of the decision to purchase will be influenced by the woman in the group or at home, and over 50% of vehicles delivered are purchased by women. So what does that tell us? That tells us, back in the day, we don't ignore the wife, the spouse, the girlfriend, the women that are involved in the deal, because they're ultimately going to make the buying decision. And those are the ones we got to make sure we sell. Usually it's going to follow. And then number 7, 30% of all people have a family member who will be trading vehicles within the next 90 days. And 62% of all people know someone who will be trading within 90 days. So there's great referral business right there that we need to stay on top of and follow up. And you can go to the next slide, Mike. And number 8, 20% of features on your vehicles are all your prospects care about, not everything you know about your product. So they're saying that they may time out with all the technology. And this is an NADA stat this is a little bit dated, so maybe a little bit higher than that. But like, even on everything on photos that we put online, there's even a stat out there that's saying, after 9, 10, 11 photos, as long as the photos are laid out, that's where they time out. So number 9, 80% of the selling and buying is done in your 4 presentation steps of the sale. Absolutely. And number 10, 50% of the people buy on the spot when they get what they feel is a good presentation and a good demonstration of the product. So is that true? That 50% of the people walking in, we can spot them and sign them up right now. And I'm hoping we're all going and thinking we're going to deliver a car right now. Because if they get out of there, it's always tough trying to get people back. Number 11, 86% of the people buy a different make or model vehicle or a different color or different features than they initially intended to purchase. So this stat's been out there for a long time, and I know it's true today. So 86% come in, set on something, and we switch them to something else and put them something in stock or something similar, or that we created a deal. And it could be something completely off of what they were on. And it's like you follow up with a customer they didn't buy, and you call them up and you get you did call, you did buy one somewhere else, and you find out what they bought and it wasn't even close to what they came in here for, because they ran into somebody and they created a deal for that customer and sold. Number 12, 96% of the people who are given figures on the lot or in the office who leave without buying shop those figures, and it's the same percentage on the phone and internet too. And even today, it's amazing. It's not that we don't want to give people figures. We do. But it's amazing how much information that we do give them over the phone, thinking that may drive the customer in. We're even appraising cars and telling them, yeah, I think it's worth that, or whatever the case may be. But this is what the customers do. But we got to make sure we stay on top of it and make sure we drive that customer back into us. And number 13, currently 86% of all buyers begin the process by gathering information through the internet before going to the dealership. That's probably way higher now. It's probably 100 or close to 100. And number 14, 90% of the people who leave without buying are never contacted again. Now, that's a stat that's really, really tough. And to think if we don't follow up and we don't continue to go after that customer, that they just decide they're not going to buy a car now, they're out of the market, they left our place and they're done, they're out of the market. No, they're the stats show they're going to buy a car in 48 to 72 hours. So if we're thanking them and calling them after 30 minutes after they leave the store, give them a thank you call for coming in. Really appreciate the opportunity. Try to sell them at that point. Just staying in contact with those people to make sure we try to drive them back again. I mean, it's so important. And obviously the bottom stat is too bad because we could follow up. 33% will come back in and 67% of those people are going to buy a car. So I'm good with that, Mike. You can roll into the next.
That last one, Bill, is one I always talk about when I'm doing a new person class, that I have them start, highlight it, circle it, and it's so much easier once the customer's already come in when they come back in to close them, right? So that's a huge one to follow up.
Well, if they're in a second time, we should be able to put that deal together. If they come in a third time, we're still not putting the deal together. I always like to say doing something wrong, especially if 85% of the people leave their house saying we're buying a car today.
Absolutely.
So lease versus buy. The key is having all of your customers understand the benefits of leasing. And this is what we're going to kind of go over today here. And like I said before, the goal is not here to, everybody that comes in has to go on a lease. Look, we ultimately just want to get the car sold. And if they want to pay for it in cash, or if they want to buy the car on a retail contract, that's awesome. That's what we want to do. But I just want to make sure we got the tools and the knowledge and the capabilities to show them why the lease, in my opinion, is the best way to go in the car. So we think about YouTube, and those of you that were our salesperson's GM meeting, if you went on YouTube and just went on there and looked at lease versus buy videos and training, actually I think there's more than 200, but there's so many of them out there. And when I look, there's guys standing outside by the car just talking like I'm doing now without actually showing any numbers or stats. There's guys doing them from their couch, and it's amazing. There's some negative YouTube lease versus buy ads saying you should never lease a car. There's a guy out there saying this is how you hack a lease. You can watch his video and you can hack into their lease and take it over. And there's another guy that says how to lease a BMW for $50 a month. And that's his video out there. So if you go look at that, it goes on and on. It take you a couple days to get through them. But I've watched a lot of them, and really none of them really key on some of the things I'm going to go over with you today. So you get, just to reach out. And these YouTube videos got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views of people watching them.
Yeah, it's crazy out there. So do some research on that as well. But so what we'd like you to do is we're going to give you 1 minute. So make sure you mute yourselves, but have a discussion with the people that you're with. And how do you define a lease to your customers? So what's the definition of a lease? How do you explain it in the simplest way? And then after a minute, we'll come back together and we'll have some of you share what you came up with. Go.
It's good.
Eighty percent people that come in here that buy a Mercedes just flip to sit down. So you might as well lease it. You don't have to lose.
Mike, how would you define a lease to your customers?
For me, I'd just like to say, especially if you're kind of someone who likes to kind of get in and out of your cars pretty frequently, it's a short
All right, that's about a minute. So, Bill, we're going to come back as a whole group. And I'm in Granville, Michigan. I got a bunch of our team members here. We had a great discussion on how do you define a lease. So, Hannah, you want to share yours? What you shared? Your definition?
Oh yeah, it's like you're dating the car before not married it right away. You have the option to buy it out at the end, but just to start off to see if you like it, you can lease it.
Okay, so that was one that we had here, Bill. What'd you have out there?
Go ahead. Anybody want to share one of their ideas, Tom?
A couple that we had written down here is short-term protected commitment.
Okay.
You could drive 3 leased cars versus 1 car over a term. Your maintenance, 0 equity position, the latest and greatest technology, and you're always under warranty.
That's awesome. So you actually went into some of the advantages already, right? So you defined it and then went into some of the advantages. Great. Who else?
Anybody?
So yeah, I mean, they kind of just hit everything on the spot. We harp on a lot with technology, ever changing literally every minute of the day. It seems like this day and age. It's the same thing with the cars. It's a great way to keep with the latest and greatest. You're always going to have something new, and that feeling every time you buy a car. Within the next year and a half, you're itching to get something else. So a lease is a great way not to have a long-term commitment and keep your options open.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, we got one here, Bill in Orland.
Okay,
So
Kyle.
what we said, at least defined is limiting your exposure to any kind of depreciation and giving you more options on how to buy the car at the end.
Thanks, Kyle. We got you loud and clear. That's a great one. Let's take one more definition of a lease, and then we'll jump into our next step.
I guess, yeah, I don't know. Leasing is more like renting in a way, if you want to pitch it to them that way. Obviously, they have a little bit more personal attachment to the vehicle. It's not a true rental, you know what I mean? But it's a way for them to just get into the car of their dream, something that they can get a little bit more, and it's going to give them an advantage in the long run. And the way these manufacturers are, trickling out features and differences each year, you buy a car, the next year they come out with something that you really wish you would have had. Definitely a great option to get into a lease and take advantage of those extra features sooner rather than later. You're always going to be one step ahead of everybody, just like you are with cell phones. I mean, everything is now pretty much going on that route. Everything's subscription-based and lease-based. There's really not a lot of ownership in a lot of ways where you're going to keep it for a very long time just based on how much things change. So leasing is going to give you the best advantage. And that's the case every time.
Yeah, great example there. And Bill, we've got an advanced group here because they've all gone into some of our next stuff, right? On actually the advantages. So this is great. Well, probably the easiest way to explain it to a customer is it's an alternate way to purchase a car. Alternate way to purchase a car. And then we will get into some of the advantages. And there are a lot of myths out there too. So let's, as a group, share what are some of the myths that customer might have about a lease. Let's just share a few of those. What myths do they have?
They get nothing out of it.
Penalties at the end.
They get nothing out of it, right? What else?
Okay.
They say they like
They're
to
spending all
own
the
their
money
cars.
for something they can't own.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I heard own a few of our stores. So if they purchase a car, but they don't pay cash for the full amount and they finance it for 5 years, do they actually own it right away? No, they don't, right? So we can explain that. So that's a myth. What are some other myths? Nate, you had one. More of a question. Okay. Other myths. Okay. A few that we had, Bill, you can jump in here too, obviously, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. But a lot of customers might think that buying is actually cheaper than leasing. And we've got some great scenarios today that Bill's going to walk you through the math and use documentation to show the customers that that's actually not true.
Yes.
own the car. That was another one too that I think North Riverside guys came up with, right? The ownership thing. I drive too many miles. So the
That's a-
miles thing, Bill.
That's a big one, Mike. Yeah, so, I mean, that's probably, I can't lease, I drive too many miles. There's just no way. No, then we table it, we move on from there. And I'm gonna show you today that is not the case. If you drive many miles, that's the reason you should lease. And we'll show you why.
That's a big one. And then also customers we know love options, right? So they may think that they're stuck and that there are no options. Well, we're gonna show you today all the options that a customer does have if they are in a lease.
And as long as we've been leasing cars, Mike, when people say they're stuck, I mean, this is back in the day when we were leasing. We had people call us up and they never knew they could get out of their lease. They would keep it right to, well, nobody ever told me I could trade it in. So just because they leased the car doesn't mean you can't trade the car in 12 months, 14 months, just like a purchase. So we get the payoff and we trade it in and they can get out of it for whatever reason. If their needs change, they need to get another car. So.
I got a trivia question for everybody.
All right,
So-
Will, go for it.
We'll see what the consensus is. Let's say you buy the car, okay, and you lease the car, and the amount that you finance is 50 grand, and the amount that you finance on a lease is 50 grand. When you go to trade that car in, is there any difference on what that balance would be? If you go to trade that car in a year, if you bought it and you leased it and the payments were the same, would there be any difference?
Yeah,
Well, you're getting deep here early. I like it.
I guess it depends on how you look at it. The way the question was framed, it sounds like, under the lease, you have the same payment and but it's a shorter term. So it depends on, are you including the residual buyout figure as opposed to the finance payoff? But yeah, I guess it kind of shakes out to be the same if it's a year only, but that's a tough way.
So the answer is it is the same if the payments are the same, because whether you make 36 payments of 500 on a lease or 36 payments of 500 on a purchase, it ends up being the same. But the misconception is that a lot of people think that if they lease, they're stuck and they can't get out. When really, if they go to, I mean, obviously we've all been there. If everybody's sold a car and they buy it and they want to trade it in 3 months, they're still stuck. I mean, for the most part, I mean, they're still got a ton of negative. So you have the negative either way. The car's worth what it's worth, and if your adjusted cap cost on a lease is the same as the finance balance on a purchase, and if the payments were exactly the same, you would be in the same situation no matter what. And a lot of people get that confused. They think, well, if I lease, I'm going to be tied in and stuck in the payments, and you're actually not. You're in the same situation.
Yeah. Point.
Thanks, Will. That is awesome. Great example. The last one I think we had here, Bill, is the customer actually thinks that we make more money, right?
Mike, this is big. So this last one here, and I make sure when I go in and talk to a customer about when I'm going to lay out a buy lease comparison to them, this is one of the first things I tell them right out of the box, because they're pushing back. I'm not leasing a car, and this is that. Say, look, I just want to let you know we don't make any more money whether you lease the car or you buy the car. I mean, the goal is we want to make money on both sides of the equation, but we don't make any more money. So there's nothing in it for us that's going to put the customer in a bad way that somehow we're going to hold more money or they're going to be tricked into paying more money. And I like to tell them that it gets the guard down. So however they want to buy it is how we're going to sell them the car. But once we start going through the math, hopefully they come up and say, how come nobody's ever showed it to me this way?
We have actually had one more. So the customer ties in with that, right? But customer does not get a good deal. That would be another myth.
Yeah, well, they don't think they own it. They don't think they're paying to rent the car, which technically it's the same thing, but we're going to show them in the math here. So,
Bill, take it over from here with the checklist.
Yeah, so when we go down the checklist of what is the true cost of driving. So when we look at, we purchase a car, we make the payments, we put a down payment, and then what do we have in the end? And that's what we're going to show today on the lease, the same thing. What do we have in the end after the lease? And what do we have on the purchase side? So, and I always love to use documents to show the customer. So it's always more effective. And I let them even use, as you showed Mike earlier, you had your big calculator, plug in some of the numbers themselves so they can see what I'm trying to go over with them when I'm showing them a lease buy comparison. And this is true. Most money factors are cheaper than interest rates. I mean, right now we got zero out there rampant with low rates all over the the country for sure. But even money factors equate to lower than an interest rate or a standard rate for sure. And that's been that way for a long time. Depreciating costs. So what happens, as soon as somebody buys the car, they drive it out of the showroom, right? So this is a depreciating asset we're buying. Is buying a car a good deal for them as an investment side? No. So you want to buy a house, okay, and you want to lease a car. And this is what I believe. I'm not just stating this. This is what I believe. I lease all my cars, and I probably most of us in this room do the same thing. Future maintenance on purchases. We all know what happens in the third or fourth year. You got brakes, you got tires, you got maintenance, and people forget about that, right? And when you get into the high-end luxury cars, it gets really pricey on what we're going to spend on that car if we keep it. And that's where back in the day, the short-term lease came into play, where there was 27-month leases and 24-month leases. Because as soon as a customer starts looking, say, I got to put tires on it, I got to start to do maintenance, they say, you know what, I'm just going to trade it in. That's when they wanted to get out. That's where we, back in the day, we had our short-term leases. All my employees lease cars, including me. I just covered that. I love to use hand gestures. I'm Italian, so I always like to stand up and talk and move around, and that's what I like to do. So I like to show them this is where they're going if they buy a car long term. And then the trading cycle. If you look, the average loan duration is 36 months. So that's out on retail contracts. So people are trading, people are paying off their cars, but it's mostly that's when people start thinking about trading when we get back into the maintenance side. And then 60% of all leases, if you got a portfolio, they're going to return to you. So, and 60% of all retail loans are going to defect. They go somewhere else. So you have a 20% better chance of getting that customer back in. And if you do your follow-up properly, you stick with that customer, you're calling them after 6 months, a year, year and a half, and staying in contact with that customer, that lease return, you can get that up to 85% to get that customer to come back and lease with you. Look, they don't want to go anywhere else because people don't shop like they used to. They do it online. And then I'll get into this. So back in the day, this is back in, late 80s, early 90s when this started. So they used to call leasing back in the day, we were trained on this, and it was called half a car. And why did they call it half a car? Anybody that's been here, anybody want to guess why they call it half a car?
You pay for half the car.
That's pretty simple. Yeah, we got a winner over here. You pay for half of the car. You're really only paying for the part of the car that you're actually using, and it began in the 90s. So I don't know if everybody can see this, but here is the original lease, red carpet lease calculator from Ford that Ken Ferrari had, our sales manager over at JLR, that he still had from back in the day. So this is what we used. This little pocket calculator. We had no systems. We had nothing. And it was this little calculator that we used to calculate our leases. And here was a line that we used back in the day. So you couldn't use the word lease. The word lease was taboo. It was out. As soon as you bring it up, everybody backed up because the leases back in the day were nothing like they are today. So we would ask the customer, we would say, look, we can get your payment back in the day, you think about the amount, $250 a month for 5 years or 2 years, which would you prefer? And that was the line. And then you look at you, well, what are you talking about? 2 years or 5 years? And that's when we would get into the half a car. And we'd show them the different way to get into this car. And back Ford really kind of, I don't want to say they pioneered it, but back from where I was from, Ford was ahead of the game when it came to that. And it was all short-term 24-month leases. And we had this oak-style octagon little thing full of stock cars. And we were flipping everybody every 18 months out of their cars, putting them in 24-month leases. And what do? We kept that customer with us, and we kept reselling that car again, and we just repeated it and repeated it. And back in the day, it worked, it was incredible. But if you look at the ads today, who's out there advertising? What's the leader ad out there? Everybody's showing a lease payment. I just saw one this morning for, it was a Hyundai, we don't have it, but they're advertising it for $189 a month, for a lease. There's on Schaumburg Chrysler's website, you can go in there and get a Cherokee for $210 a month right now on a lease. So when we do the math and we go through the math, we'll show you why this makes sense. So you can go to the next one, Mike. So this is another key factor after I go through the comparison with the consumer. And I tell them, I said, look, if they haven't leased a car before, if they get apprehensive, whatever it is, look, we're going to sell them exactly. Look, if they say, I just want to buy it over 72 months, yeah, awesome. That's what we're going to do. But I like to tell them, I said, look, if it doesn't work exactly the way I said, you will never come back to me. And think about that. They'll never come back if it doesn't work out the way I said it's going to work out. Because they don't believe us and they don't trust us. And I believe this is the best way. Thanks, Mike. You go next one. So only 4% of the people actually buy their car at the end of the lease. This is a stat out there, right? So the goal is at the end is we don't want the customer to buy their car. But what we're going to show them today is that if they did buy their car, it's never going to cost them more money than the purchase side. And I'm going to show that today. Okay, so they don't have the risk. The miles on, we already talked about that, the miles on the lease. And then create your own 30-month cycle of business. So you can have people getting out with lease loyalty out there and the options. So we got 4 options with the lease. Before Mike shows them, anybody in the room here, anybody online want to go over the 4 options the customer has when his lease is up?
Turn it in, walk away, buy it, get a new car.
So you can walk away, right? Turn it in. You can trade it, right? You can buy it, right? And what else? You can sell it retail. Can you sell your lease to somebody, right? What if you leased a Jeep Wrangler that's got resale value way up to here, right? It's going to be worth more than a buyout. So you can sell it to your neighbor. So you got 4 options. With the purchase, the option is you can trade it in or you can keep paying for it. Those are your options. You can still try to sell it, obviously, yourself. But those are the options that we want to make sure the customer understands that they have. They don't drive it very much or whatever, they want to sell it to their neighbor, pick up some money, they can do that. You go to the next one there, Mike.
Yeah, we were just saying, Hannah was saying, like, a lot of times customers aren't aware of these 4 things, Bill, because no one has taken the time to explain it to them before if they're in a lease, right? So
Right.
By us taking the time to explain it, showing that we're professionals and we're standing out from everyone else.
And then here's some advantages that they actually had this worksheet done at our Infinity store here in Hoffman prior that we've added a few things to, but these are just advantages to leasing over buying. So here you got a short-term commitment, you got a lower down payment, right? We talk about sales tax, right? You're paying tax on the payment only, and that's how it was in Michigan. So we came out to Illinois here in 2013. They used to charge sales tax on a lease, full sales tax of the selling price. So they changed that in 15, so it's a lot more competitive and better today than it was. So no negative equity exposure ever. The vehicle is always under warranty. We got updated technology that we talked about, safety options. You get a new vehicle every 3 years. You get tax write-off advantages. Gap insurance, as we know, is included on all leases. So if they wipe the car out, it's done. So, and also if they get in an accident, the Carfax turns in bad, what happens when you appraise a car with a bad Carfax and they're in a 72-month loan, right? What happens to the value? So they have that issue. So the goal here is to provide all the information you need.
I got one more to add to that list that I think probably 99% of the people out there miss, and it's for subprime customers. So because the rates on a lease are typically a lot less, even when it's subprime, the money factor, if you convert it to an interest rate, if you got a customer that, you know, has a 600 credit score and you're sending out to another bank, outside bank, and you're 14, 15%, typically the lowest tier on a lease, usually those rates are somewhere around 7, 8, 9%. So if you convert it and do the math for them, you can close a subprime customer on interest rate on the lease because typically the rate's a lot less than a retail. So like at BMW, for example, the lowest rate right now, I think is plus 70. So it'd be, so this would be for any customer that's 575 score or less. So their effective interest rate is only 3.64% if you convert it to a rate on a customer that's a 575 score. That's the lowest tier that BMW has. So if you convert the math, it's just another option on a subprime customer or somebody that's super rate conscious on a buy to flip them on rate on a lease.
That's a great selling point. I mean, that, you know, when you think about that, you get somebody that's incredibly challenged and you could show them that factor. That is a big deal for them. But who wants to pay 15, 16%? Nobody. And they're not going to build any equity at that rate, especially to a long-term loan. And it puts them in a really tough position. And you want to put the customer in the best position they can be in when you're selling them a car. Not only for them, for you. So they're going to come back to you again and buy cars.
Hey, Bill.
Yes, sir.
We had a question here in Granville about the tax write-off advantages. Could you just explain that for a second?
Sure. So depending on, you know, what you do for a living or whatever, most accountants, depending on the company that you work for, is going to allow you to write the lease off, a percentage of the lease off, and that's been out there for a long time. Some people don't know that, but you can. And so
it's in a business. If you have it in a business, you can expense the whole monthly payment on your taxes. I mean, if you look at business deals across, all the ones that, I mean, we do a ton here. Every business I do, unless it's somebody trying to use the full depreciation tax credit on like a SUV that's over 6,000 pounds, everybody leases them because you can expense the full amount of the payment against the business and write that off. Versus buying it, you have to carry it on your balance sheet and you have to use government depreciation, and it works a little bit against you. So lease is definitely the best thing if you're doing the business name.
Yeah, and you think about all the customers that we have that we sell that own businesses, right? I mean, it's a huge number.
Yeah, no, exactly. We have in fact, Will just delivered him a car. He had a gentleman that's leased 3 or 4 7s. Figured it out where he makes a bunch of security deposits up front, and then he buys the car from his company in the end, and he buys it for dirt cheap on the dollar. And I know, Will, you just leased him a car again for like the 4th or 5th one, and he makes like a $4,000 a month payment. There's no way he'd buy a car. So here we are. So we're going to get into the math side of it, and this is the meat and potatoes. How this works. So this is a current Infiniti. So this is a 2020 QX60. We have it in stock today. And this is just a side-by-side comparison map. So we did it at retail. So it doesn't matter if you do the comparison at invoice, the selling price is the same. So the rebates may vary, and we applied the applicable rebates of what it qualifies for versus a lease and versus a buy. So this first one here, which is what we currently have, is comparing this lease against a 0% interest rate. And when you compare them against a standard rate of 4.9, it really makes a big difference. But even at 0%, I want to show you that the math works out better on the lease. So as you can see on the leasing side, the payment's $668 a month for 39 months. And if you look on the bottom on the right-hand corner, the residual value is $26,515. So that's the buyout at the end of the time. So, and on the purchase side, it's 0% financing the whole balance. You can see the rebate at the top is $1,000 plus 0. The lease rebate and combined with the lease cash is $49.75 on the opposite side. So this is current. So you can go to the next screen, Mike, and we'll go through the worksheet. So here we are. So here's the worksheet. Going through the worksheet, you can do this like we developed some of these little simple worksheets, but you can use a blank sheet of paper and kind of lay it out with the customer. And if you write it out right in front of the customer, it's really powerful. But you look at the 39-month lease, so they got $2,000 out of pocket. The monthly payment at $669, we just rounded it off. So after the first 38 payments, okay, the total money they paid in payments is $25,422, which he's got the arrow on right there. So on the buy side, $2,000 down, the monthly payment at 0% is $797. So after 38 payments, they're going to spend $30,286. So here's a question to stop right here. So at 38 payments, they owe $30,286, or that's what they spent right now. So they spent another $48.64 at this point. So when you drop down and you get the buyout, which is a lease residual, okay, it's $26,515, and you go over to the other side, they got 34 payments left on the retail side at $27,098. So the question is, after 38 months, is this car even worth the $27,098? So that's a question we all gotta ask. So based on whatever miles they put on it at this point, let's just assume that it is. But chances are, it usually is not worth the buyout or worth the remaining payments on the purchase side. So then when you do the total, you can show the customer, you add it back up, you add the buyout to their payments. There's $2,000 out of pocket on both sides. And then the total after buying it, okay, is $53,937. And then the total over here after their total is $59,384. So the difference is $54,468. Now we can leave it right there. We don't even have to get into the tax side. But obviously they got to pay tax if they're going to buy it. But what the point is here is we want to show them it's $54,466 cheaper to lease it first and then buy it than to buy it at 0% for 72 months. Okay, is everybody with me there? Anybody got a question? This is at first. Obviously, if they go to buy the car, even if we tax it, they're still going to save $32.59. And remember, this is a lease against a 0% rate. Any questions on that?
Bill, to add to that, what I
Yeah.
usually do is, right where you stopped at the same amount of payments, customers, 95% of the time, they're upside down, right? So you still owe an unknown amount because you don't know what the car's worth. But on top of that, take the two leases, times it by two, it's basically what, 51 grand?
Right.
You get two brand new cars for the time that it takes you to buy one car.
Bingo.
And if you get out early on each lease, you might be on your third car, brand new, always on the road.
Yep. Just like what Mike Perez was saying. So this is a great point. And I know Will does a little demonstration on how you get two cars in a 72-month time for less than you get for the price of one. So obviously, it would have to be taxed. But this is what we want to show a customer. When you break the math down, they go, well, how come nobody's ever shown it to me this way before? I thought I was going to spend more money, or I thought it was going to cost me. But here, the goal is, we don't want them buying the car right here. We don't want them buying the car. Only 4% buy their car. So at that point, we're going to resell them at that point, and hopefully come back in and lease another one and keep their costs down. But they could buy it. We just want to show them, if you're fighting a payment, hey, they're going to pay $650. You can move to $669, but $800 is too much. You can put them in the car that they wanted. You get them more car what they wanted, and they get to come back in and get this car.
So here's one other thing, just to add to that. So I'll ask Kyle, just in this scenario, what's a 2017 QX60 worth with 36,000 miles on it, Kyle?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. 24 grand.
Okay, so even if it's 24 grand, you still, now that number becomes a $2,500 additional advantage to the lease. And if it's worth less than that, that number even grows. And especially if the rate wasn't 0%, if it's 1.9 or 2.9, the spread gets really big.
Yeah,
And you're already upside down just based off of what they pay.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, no, exactly. And look, it doesn't mean the car's worth this. It's not worth this, and it's probably not worth this. So when they come back in and we're contacting them 6 months out, we're gonna show them that we can put them in another car, and it may not even be worth the buy. And if it is, the point is, if it is, we wanna show them it'll never cost them more money, even if it gets to the bottom and breaks even. So I got a couple other brands that I wanna go over, and you can pull the next one down. So this is one if you win it at 4.99%, which would be a 680 credit course standard rate. Look where the swing is now when you take 0 out. It's not even close. So same deal.
Difference.
And on this side, it doesn't
Wait
show
till you
the.
see the 7 Series we did.
They also picked up a 5G rebate on the retail side to bring that balance down. But that's what the difference is on the retail side when we don't currently have 0 out there. So this one, I'm gonna ask for a volunteer. So this is a lease on a BMW that's current, that you could go get today. As you can see by the payment is up there at $15.21. So I'm gonna have somebody actually come up, anybody in this room like to volunteer and do some math for me on the board and do columns, or you win a prize. Just to walk somebody through it if you start from the beginning. So,
I don't have the handwriting.
all right, so we put this together. So what I want to take a look at, this is obviously the CDK screenshot of the lease. So 54%, I think it's a 10K per year lease. You see the money factor. You see the payment at $15.21. So what we want to do is develop 2 columns just on a board. So you can write $15.21 on the left side of the board and multiply that, and somebody get their calculator out and times 36, which he's got. So hopefully the math is correct, right? Which should be 54,790.
I'm stop sharing my screen so we can zoom in on you, Bill, and we can see your numbers up there now a little better.
Okay, can you see those? Let's make sure we're okay. Can we push it forward, or can you see it?
Or maybe a foot or 2.
Yeah, I guess I'll use the fatter part.
Yeah, that's pretty good there.
Everybody see that? Okay, can you click back to the example there real quick, Mike?
Say that again, Bill.
Can you click back to the lease screen or the CDK layout for a second? There we go. So if we scroll up a page, go to the next page.
That one?
There you go, yep. So here's the purchase shot. So the purchase price, and look, it's got a 9G rebate on the purchase side at a rate of 369, but the rate isn't still too out of whack. That's a standard rate. So the payment's $17.77. Go ahead and write that down. And go ahead and do it by 36, and then we'll get to 72. Who can give me 1777 times 36?
63,990.
So that comes out to 63,990. So already you see a difference here of about $9,000 more you're going to spend in the first 36 payments. Okay. Right. So when we do the total, as you can see on this one, the total of 72 payments is $127,981 if they keep it full term. And if you go back to the other screen, the buyout on the 5490, the residual is 61,268. So if you do the math, it comes out to 116,059 is the total. So if it's So it's 116,059 versus 127. That's a difference of $11,000. And you can stop there, but if the customer says, okay, I gotta pay tax at the time, or okay, you gotta pay tax to buy it. And of course, the tax is not cheap. I think the tax is $5,400. You can tax it. Go back to the other screen there, Mike. Sorry, have me flip it back and forth. So we tax it at $5,400, and the total comes out to 121 or 5,054. 121, 113 is your total. So here you still own the car, right? And on the other side, you're gonna own the car, but it's gonna cost you $127,000. So it doesn't matter how many miles are on a purchase or on a lease at that point, it's the same. So what, actually 128.
And just to add to that, so I just pulled up on KBB, what would a 2018 750, because this is a 21 that we ran the lease on, what's it worth? Fair value on KBB says 48 grand. So not only is it, you know, 7,000 cheaper if they lease it and buy it, but then it's worth almost 12 grand, 13 grand less than the residual.
Yeah, they got
So,
$4 grand that they owe at that point. That's worth 40.
so huge spread on the lease. On the high dollar cars, every high dollar car that I've ever seen, you'd have to be absolutely insane to buy one. It makes 0 sense. I've done every scenario and every single car. I don't care what brand it is. It makes 0 sense to buy these cars, especially because I'll give you an example. Last year, the 2019 8 Series BMW came out. COVID hits in the spring. These cars went from, you know, $130,000 cars that they put $20,000 in dealer cash on to get rid of these cars. Anybody that bought these cars last year took almost a 40 to 50% depreciation in the first year. So if they bought them, they're taking a massive hit. If they leased them, the bank's on the you know, the hook for the value of the car. So when you're selling, I always like to use that scenario and say, hey, you never know what kind of rebates or what's going to happen in the world, especially now. And you don't know if they're going to put 10 grand in dealer cash on them or whatever it's going to be. And if you buy the car, that's coming right off the car that you're buying. So whatever they do in 6 months to get rid of these, I got an oversupply, you're not on the hook for that. And it doesn't affect the car that you bought. So it's another good way to just say, hey, you're taking some of that rebate risk out of there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember back in the day at Granville, they emailed the masses of the Ziegler Auto Group on a Quattroporte for $799 for employees. I think it had, I don't know, 25 grand certificate on it. But you could obviously figure what the payment's going to be on 125 grand, but you could lease it for $799. You know, you would have been crazy to buy that car. I mean, back in Michigan, back in the day, when I had my Chrysler store, we were leasing 85% of everything that went out the door. And you remember back in 08, I think it was July of 08, you know, the banks, gas went up, people couldn't get rid of their trucks fast enough, if you remember, and all the values went down, and they stopped leasing. They wouldn't even lease anything. I thought, what are we going to do? Yeah, well, we're going back to retail. You know, we got to flip people back to the retail side because that's how powerful it was. Michigan's a big lease state, they have big tax advantage, but it's just the smartest way to go. And I don't care what brand you are out there that are watching today, Ford, Chrysler, Chevy, you can do the math. You can continue to do the math on all of them. And even if it gets to the bottom and it's a break even, it's still better to lease the car, because it's not going to cost them any more money. So that way you got flexibility on the payment. Hopefully it allows you to make more money, and that's what you want to do to get that car sold, showing the customer that they believe in it and they don't think, yeah, it's a bad deal for them. It's not going to cost them more money.
Has anybody else use this in their lease presentation if they're trying to switch somebody? But I found this probably about 4 or 5 years ago. When I was doing F&I, I used to actually use this in the box to sell maintenance and stuff and warranties. But this is a great add-in to anybody that's leasing, because if you're under maintenance and you're under the factory warranty, you start adding these costs into what they're actually going to pay for the car on a buy. It ends up being substantially more. So especially on a Highline car, these numbers, and I think these are probably a little bit inflated, but it works kind of in our advantage. That's only a 5-year deal. So if you had another year in there, you could say, hey, you're going to spend X amount in maintenance and service and et cetera. And you can really save some money doing 2 leases back to back.
And Bill,
Yeah, this is awesome, Will. So anybody out there has free access to this, correct? On admins.com?
Yeah, if you just go into Google and type Edmunds true cost to own, it has basically, every model or pretty much every model that's in there, all the mainstream models, and it kind of gives you the 5-year breakdown of. But I always like to use it for what are they going to spend in repairs and maintenance estimated. Even if you took 50% of those numbers and said, hey, even if you spent 50% of the 10 grand that it's going to cost you to own this car for 6 years, it's still significantly less on the lease side.
Yeah, great example, Will.
I got something I was going to add. I mean, again, to kind of add to this point is that on a short-term lease, you have calculated ownership, everyone's budget. But really, on a lease, you have 3 factors. You have your payment, your gas, and your maintenance. And then with BMW and Mercedes, you can add in prepaid maintenance, and you can really calculate your cost to have the car for 3 years or less. Where on like a long-term buy, you don't know those unknown costs, cost of maintenance.
Sure. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. Anybody got any questions on what we've shown so far?
Matt had also brought up, when you're looking at all these purchases at the end of the lease, not most of these people are writing checks for them, right? So you're going into another loan, so now your total ownership is over what? Another 8 years total?
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're correct, and I left that part out. So even at the buyout, if you show them, you're gonna tax it. So obviously, to get that savings at the buyout, they have to pay cash at that point, okay? And if they write a check for cash to buy that car, are they truly saving that money? 100%. They're saving all that money. So if they refinance the balance on the buyout, if it gets to that, you can still show them at the 0%, there was $3,200, right, that they were gonna save. So what's it gonna cost them to finance that balance if they had to buy it for whatever reason? It still would not be more than a 0% deal on the other one. It's not gonna cost $3,200 at whatever rate for short term, or let's say it does. It just won't cost them more money. And that's what I like to show them, if it gets to that, if somebody brings that up. But that's true, that's exactly what happens.
And your car, like say you get an E-Class, you turn in your trade-in, it's not gonna be certified when you go to buy it out again. So you're gonna be out of warranty, or you're gonna be a year left only, without the unlimited miles and everything.
That's all the reason, those are all the clauses that we want to use not to buy their lease out and come back in and get another one. So if they did finance it and say, well, your new payment is whatever, $400 a month, and or $500 a month, and we can put it in for the same payment.
2017.
Show them that.
It's real small.
All right, Mike, you can roll it up. So this will be the last example. So this is a 2021 Bighorn. I got this from Downers Grove. And again, we're going to compare this, which is a little bit tougher because the math really goes a big swing, but we're going to go against the 0% that it's eligible for. And I know currently right now, we're going to work it in a retail deal, but I believe you can get employee on a purchase and you can't get employee on a lease, which is a little bit strange, but that's the program that they got on. So if you look at the purchase side, Bighorn Ram, 52,789 window, 2,000 cash down, 0% for 72. The payment's $765. So I'll just do the math here real quick. So on the purchase side, 765. Somebody want to give me that times 35. Times 35, 26,775. Hopefully everybody can see that. I'll get out of the way. Okay, scroll to the next screen there, Mike. And the reason I'm going 35, because I think we did a even $2,000 down on both sides. $2,000 out of pocket, which we did. So here's the lease. MSRP 57% residual. The payment on the lease is $596. So what's $596 times 35?
2860.
What is it?
20,860.
Well, that's 20,860. So hopefully everybody can see that. So we got a difference of, what is that, about $6,000. So after 35 payments, it's gonna cost you $6,000 more at 0% to own this Ram in the first 35 payments. So Mike, if you go back, obviously we got, 765 times 37 payments left. Give me that number real quick.
28,305.
So 28,305. We got 10, 8, and what is it? 7, 15, 55,080.
Yep.
Okay, that's 55,080. And then if we do the buyout, which is 30,090, what's that total?
50,950.
So that's 50,950. So we got a difference of about 4,600 bucks. This is on a new Ram. Obviously, we got to tax it here. So even if we tax it at 8.25%, still going to save you about 2,500 bucks. To lease it and then buy it against a 0% deal on a Ram purchasing it. Got to keep your customer coming back. And when you show them the math, and I don't care what brand, you can work it out. Look, we did a G, what's the small one? The GLA we did. And we did it for Mercedes, and it come out pretty much even to a wash on the side. But even if it's a wash, the payment's cheaper. They're in a brand new car. And this is something that you can show people the math on. So if you're fighting a payment, this is a great option if they say, I'm not leasing a car and I don't want to hear about it. Here's the comeback. Says, give me 5 minutes. Just let me show you that. I'll show you on paper, not verbally, that the lease will never cost you more money. Just give me 5 minutes and however you want to go, I'll show it.
And Bill, the key to that is the timing. You can't open up with, hey, you should lease this car,
Oh, exactly right.
right? You know, you can't open with that at hello, so.
Yeah, oh, 100%. Yeah, this is not something, look, you know, we gotta get the coffee brewing. We got first land them on a car, we gotta get them sold on a car. And then when we get into it, if the payment becomes the issue, look, if somebody comes straight out and says, you know, you hit them with a retail payment at, you know, $1,400 and they say, yeah, that's good. Stop talking. We take the deal. So we sell them the car. So that's what we want to do. If they said, I got to be somewhere around $1,000, you know, this is too much car. Either we got to switch them or here's that opportunity right now to take a look at a lease. And they say, oh, no, I've leased the car in the past. I don't want to lease. This is the opportunity that we can show them. It's not going to cost them any more money.
Hey, Bill, so how about, you know, as we all know, it's hard to get a customer to come back into the store after they leave. So say if it comes down, you land them on a car, they love the car, they don't like the payment, so then you go into the whole lease versus buy scenario. Now, what happens what's your rebuttal, I guess, to a customer that you do pique their interest in what the lease is, but they just got to go do more research on it. They got to go make sure it's the right thing for them to do, and they want to leave the dealership. Do you revert back to the purchase to try to get them back comfortable and try to make the deal? Or do you risk if you threw everything at them for them to leave and come back?
Well, yeah. So look, at the end of the day, the goal is to sell that car right then and there. And if that's what it takes, if they get confused or they're not sure, even if we go through this whole scenario and they go, it looks right, but I don't believe you. You know, I don't believe the math. You know, we can go right back to the retail side of it. And then they say, well, I need some time now. I need to think about it. Now you got me thinking. And that's one thing we don't wanna do. We don't want people backing up. We wanna take advantage of it, but we could just keep going and breaking down the objections. You know, go ahead, Matt.
What I found is that for most customers that are always buying, they're creatures of habit. So anything new is going to be scary, right? So I just say, yeah, you know, anything new, you're gonna be hesitant regardless. But if you show them the value and how much they're gonna save, you know, it's gonna pique their interest. And yeah, maybe they need to think about it, or they need to call someone that leases. You know, I'm sure they have a friend or someone that leases that can tell them, yeah, this is a great idea. You know, so if you're just upfront and honest with them and tell them, say, yeah, look, I know it's probably scary, but I'm just trying to save you money, put you in a better position. Because remember, you know, the manufacturers that have 0% on cars, it's for a reason. They don't want the car back. Right? So that car ain't gonna be worth anything in 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, you know. So very rarely does Mercedes offer 0%. And if it is, it's a car that's going out of design, and they don't want to see the car again ever.
Right. No, you're exactly right. It's a great point. And just like the point that I said, look, just reassure them we make no more money on a lease than a purchase. And if it doesn't work exactly like I'm showing it to you right here, you're never gonna come back to me. If this isn't the reality of it, you're not coming back to me ever. And that's what, and even at that point, if they still wanna say, well, I gotta talk to my financial advisor if this makes sense, you know, obviously that can happen, and that's something that, we just gotta keep going at that point. Try to put them in the car. But, look, it's a short term, you're trying to get the customer to have the least cost of driving, period. Our goal here is to have the lowest cost of driving by owning a car. And how we get there doesn't matter. So we want the cheapest way to get there. And in my opinion, and my belief is, the lease is the cheaper way, as I just showed you some of the math. Now, of course, if they refinance the balance, maybe it goes over a little bit, but maybe not, depending on where that goes out. But again, we don't want them keeping it at that point anyway. Then they get a brand new car, because if they do, then they got the maintenance still on the buyout like they do on the purchase side. So that's happened, obviously. Obviously that will happen, but hopefully that helps you with it out.
One other thing I always add to a customer, just when if they're refuting the lease or they're giving you objections, I always ask them this question, and I ask them before you even present the lease, or if they're saying I don't want a lease, you ask them this. Let's say I was selling you my house, and I'm going to sell it to you today for $100,000. In 3 years from now, I'm going to tell you it's only going to be worth $50,000, and you're going to lose $50,000 in 3 years buying this house. Would you buy my house? What does everybody say? No, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to lose $50,000. Well, why on earth would you buy the car? Because if you buy the car, you're going to lose 50% or potentially more. What if you get in an accident and it takes a Carfax hit or whatever else? But usually people they kind of stop and they're like, you kind of set them up, because of course they're not going to do that. They're just going to throw $50,000 down the drain. No. So it's just another way to get them thinking on, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe renting it's better. So you're not gonna buy something you're gonna lose money on. It's just what's the lowest cost of driving that car.
That's awesome. I really like that, Will.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Somebody that, what they say they want to pay cash. Look, yeah, I don't want payments either way. I just want to pay cash. Of course, we're going to sell them the car, but we do a prepaid lease. So back in the day, we were doing a lot of prepaid leases. A lot of financial institutions will, well, you see this money factor here, quadruple too. It doesn't get much lower than that, but you would get a break on the rate if you did a prepaid lease. They can prepay it, don't have any payments. So they're in there trying to write a check. What if I can, you only have to write a check for 30% or 35 or 40% of what you're trying to give me. What are you talking about? Then we go through the math, and that's another way that people want to pay cash. Plus, you can go out there and get a high yield municipal bond out there and get 4.5% tax free on your money. You're not going to get it in the bank. So take that money and park it elsewhere rather than on a depreciating asset that does nothing but goes down. If you run those cash arguments.
How about that I drive too many miles objection?
So that's a great question. So think about the whole scenario that we've laid out here. Somebody comes in and says, I can't lease. I drive 25,000 miles a year. So can we calculate leases with, what's the max? Is it 30,000? 20. 20 for Mercedes.
25.
I think some of the other brands, I think we go up to 30 or 25 a year. Up to 100 in that period. So you do the same math, then you show them. And then you look at the value of how quickly their car is depreciating on the purchase side as they put miles on. So if they're put 60,000 miles on in the first 2 years, what have they done when they purchased it? And they're probably gonna have to do it on the lease side too, right? They're probably already putting brakes on it, tires, routine maintenance. And then we gotta look at what the value is after 2 years on a new car. What do we hit a car at that's 2 years old that comes in with 60,000 miles on it? So then we can do the math and say, this is what it's cost them, okay, the same way on a high mileage drive, or we build the miles into the lease side and we say, this is what you're paying for this car, this is what it's really gonna cost you in value and payments in total. Then we build it up on the lease side, your payment's gonna go up $200 a month to do those miles, but your risk is out. Then we can also sell them any type of lease package to cover any maintenance that's available on that car at that point. And then you can just turn the car in and you're covered and you don't have the risk. If their needs change and their miles aren't as great in that term, they can still trade it, right? Or they can get out of it, or it's not gonna cost them as much because of miles. But a lot of times, some with a high mileage car or high mileage lease, what do? We buy them out of it versus turning it and want to pay the penalty. So you
The real thing that comes down to is the question of is realized versus unrealized depreciation. So in a lease, if you set up the correct mileage, you're realizing that real cost of driving up front because you're making those payments. If you take it to 72 or 84 months, the payment's a lot lower on a purchase. And if you drive a ton of miles, you're just, when you go to trade that car in, then you are realizing that depreciation. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, I got $15,000 worth of negative equity because I drive 25,000 miles a year. What was your real payment? So you say, okay, I paid, I don't know, in 2 years, I paid $1,000 a month, 24,000. Now I have 15 grand of negative. And you divide that by the same term and say, okay, what did I really pay? Because this is what it cost me, because now I have to trade that car in and I got to roll that negative over. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, well, I'll just deal with it later. Well, they're going to have to deal with it at some point. We've all seen it where somebody drives a super high mileage purchase and they come in and they're 20 grand flip. So it's just when do you realize it's going to cost you at some point. It's either going to cost you when you trade it or it's going to cost you now. And typically on a high mileage lease, all the ones, especially on the Highline cars that I've seen, I got a couple customers that do 30,000 mile a year leases with BMW, and these cars are worth 10 to 15 grand less than residual or more, because the bank doesn't, the auctions don't see these high mileage cars, so they take huge hits in the depreciation. So they end up being worth a lot less than even what the residual is up front, and you don't want that risk. The other thing is they're on the road all the time, so they're driving a lot, so they got a lot more driving risk. They can get in an accident, they have maintenance, warranty, etc. There's a lot more risk on buying that car if you're on the road a lot.
That's a great point. So you can tell Will's got his finance degree. I like that. That's some great knowledge there. That's awesome.
And Bill, for those customers that are long-term financing and trading out early, they're always rolling in negative equity typically, right? So I use the snowball effect, snowball going down the hill. You add a little bit more, and at some point it gets to the point where you can't roll any more negative equity.
That's right.
And so you have to either just keep the car and pay it off, and you have a car that's worth absolutely nothing, or you go into a lease. So, that's the thing, is that, customers always have the threshold, okay, I can go up $50, $100 more. Okay, now I can do another $50. And then it gets to the point where you got $20,000 in negative, you can't get it bought.
Right.
So.
No, it's a great point. I'm sure all of us have done this, where we get a customer that's so flipped and we finally convince them to finally bite the bullet and take all that negative and dump it into the lease so it's gone. So they don't have to go through it anymore. And that's a great point. And that's what helps. And that's why I think the lease is still one of the smartest ways to go. And like I said, it builds that portfolio for you. If you think about the stats out on the West Coast, so out on the West Coast and the East Coast, they're leasing at 78% of all the cars retailed out there are leased. Same number on the East Coast. Here in the Midwest, it's in, I think we're running in the 60s at Infinity right now, but I think it's somewhere in the mid-50s or low 50s% range. And still, even in Illinois, I don't want to say we're catching up, but Illinois was way behind. We came out here in 2013, and they were leasing at 15, 20%, based on the tax laws. But it's just a great way to keep that consumer in our house, keep coming back to us and build a portfolio that is endless for you guys. And that's exactly what we're hoping to get to.
Hey, Bill, quick question. I was, kind of way like an approach to what we have to like leasing over here with, in retrospect to like used cars. Would it be correct if we say like, what I've used in the past is someone's coming in looking at like a used, let's say Ford, it's a 2018, right? In terms of trying to flip them into a lease, would it be correct to be like, hey, the reason why leasing would actually be better is because, I know we want them to lease again, but at the end of the lease, it's like essentially you're buying your own perfect used car, and you know what's been in it and whatnot. So you always have. Is that a good way to present it in terms of flipping from a used into a lease?
Well, sure. I mean, anytime you can take somebody out of their used purchase, if they're looking at something on an 18, saying, hey, here's the payment, I can get you in a lease actually at that same number. And here's why, and you can go right through the math. Obviously, you want to lease a new car, in my opinion, you want to buy a used car, but they don't realize they can get a new car for the same payment sometimes. They think it's either going to be more, whatever the case may be, but I think that's a great option to take that consumer and show them that, hey, if that's an option, you could switch to try to make more money. Number two, on top of that, depending on what deal you had on the other side of the equation on the used car. But I think, and I apologize, hopefully I'm answering your question. I struggled hearing it through the speaker here, so.
Yeah, but our internet's been going in and out the whole time, so we apologize. But yeah,
I think that's a.
I like I pointed out to the end at the end of the lease, you can buy your car out, which is 3 years from now, which is essentially what you're doing right now. Is you're shopping for a used car, you're buying someone else's problems. Why not just buy your own problems at the end of the lease? That's just the way.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean that's a great close. I mean, look, you're buying a used car. Look, we have people that back away from loaners now. Somebody's driven a car, I don't want it. Well, it's only got 3,200 miles on it. But they don't want it or somebody traded it in for a reason because there was something wrong with it, and they don't want some of the problems. So, no, that's a great way to go. I mean, you buy somebody else's problems, you get a new car, you get a fresh warranty, you don't have the expense, they don't have to buy anything that comes with the car. I think it's a great opportunity. And look, there's so many opportunities when the customers come, either they're coming in on a 15 or a 16 and 18, it doesn't matter. It's just thinking outside the box and having all the tools so you're prepared as a sales team to say, look, I understand this. I can explain it. And I can explain it to my customers so they believe it. And I like to pull my lease contract out and say, look, I've leased all my cars. And here it is. I'm not going to buy anything. So I go lease my cars. So hopefully that helps.
These are really good questions. Appreciate everybody being engaged in it and asking Bill these questions. So who else has a question here for Bill? We'll take a few more minutes, then we'll close things out. Don't forget, unmute yourself if you're asking a question, and we'll go from there. Well, this was a very, very valuable and impactful session. Thanks so much, Bill, for investing time with Team Ziegler today. And let's show our appreciation to Bill. Give him a round of applause. Good job. We appreciate all that you do, Bill, and congrats on your success. Also, Bill's the kind of guy, like if you got a question or a one-on-one type situation where you want to get an answer, get some leadership from him, definitely you shoot an email to him. He's happy to help. I know Bill and I were talking, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we went around to each dealership and we were doing trainings like this as well in person. So it's so neat to see where we're at virtually today that we're able to do this. So thanks, Team Ziegler, for investing in yourself. I will shoot this presentation out so you have it as well and can look at it. But remember, documentation, right, with customers. Documentation is the latest form of negotiation. And Bill's showing you how to do it. So, hey, thanks, Bill. Great job.
Thanks, Mike. I want to thank everybody for joining for sure. And like I said, like Mike said, feel free to reach out to me anytime you got any individual questions on the leasing side. And look, I don't have all the answers. So, but you know, what I do know is that this has been so effective for me over the years in making sure the customers believe what we're telling them. And look, this is what I believe. So I hate presenting anything to a customer that I don't really think is real. And you know, when I get in groups of people at our country club or whatever, we start talking about it, and all these guys come around, we start talking about it. Look, these guys are all business owners and they still don't get it. They don't. They don't have it. They don't have it explained that way. And they just lease sometimes just because they just lease, but they really want to hear about it. So having the tools and the weapons at your disposal to try to convince somebody, the good news is to hold that customer at house. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time today.
Hey, thanks. If you're a new salesperson just getting into the business the first few years, what a great nugget for you today to present at least to your customer as well and continue to grow that cycle. So hey, everybody have a great day. Thanks, Team Ziegler. Thanks, Bill.
Yes.
Bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.